Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a set of terrifying encounters that I'd like to share with you. I also have a set of very interesting video clips. But before we get into all that, a couple links. As you all know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and the membership are in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Today's first terrifying encounter. One evening back in high school, a couple of friends and myself drove out to a very rural spot to get stoned and hang out. There wasn't a lot to do in my small hometown in rural Indiana, so these country cruises, as we called them, to random locations, was normally the highlight of our weekend. There were lots of these spots that we frequented, some more secluded than others. We decided to go to a spot known as Green Valley. It was a public lake and fishing area, so it technically is closed at dark. Not that it mattered, because there isn't a gate and cops rarely come there. Plus, there were a lot of Jeep trails that led back into the woods. So if you're in a four-wheel drive vehicle, which we were, it was fairly easy to find a spot to park that was hidden from view. By the time we had arrived, it was nearly dark, so we pulled into the main area of the lake, drove around the backside, and entered the woods via a Jeep trail. It had been raining a few days before. The trails were muddier, even without the rain, and had some deep ruts in some spots from past visitors who were mudding. Yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. We drove big trucks and Jeeps through mud pits in an attempt to get the vehicle as dirty as possible. Like I said, very small town. We didn't want to get stuck, so we stayed relatively close to the entrance of the trail. We drove far enough back to be hidden from view, killed the Jeep, turned the radio on, and proceeded to roll up a few jibbies. My girlfriends and I smoked and talked and laughed about meaningless, random things. We were having a good time when suddenly something hit the hood of my Jeep. Not loudly, but enough to make me look in the direction of the noise. I rolled the window down and didn't see or hear anything. My friends seemed not to notice. I continued our conversation when, a few moments later, another small ting sound came. This time it was on the windshield, and my friends heard it as well. After they questioned what the noise was, I decided to be brave and investigate. I assumed it was most likely acorns or walnuts falling from the trees overhead. I turned on the headlights, opened the door, and stepped out. After looking at the hood of my Jeep, I noticed a small gray rock lodged near the windshield wipers. I picked it up and showed them. We immediately recognized the rock. The front parking lot of the lake was made entirely of them. I quickly climbed back into my Jeep, rolled the window up. Assuming someone was messing with us, we decided it was time to pack it up and head out. Lots of meth heads around this area, and we were trying not to get robbed or stabbed in the woods by one. I started the Jeep, turned the radio off. I know I'm not the only one who turns down the car radio when treacherous situations arrive, and began to carefully navigate down this short trail towards the back of the lake. When all of a sudden we were barraged with rocks much larger than the initial one. all hitting the driver's side of the vehicle. I would have been pissed, but right as I let out my initial WTF, we heard a sound I will never forget. I'll never do that sound justice, as it almost is impossible to explain. It was like a loud roar. The only thing that's ever come remotely close to it for me was when I heard a male lion at a feline sanctuary I visited with my husband years later. It was full of bass and lasted roughly 7 seconds or so. It was also fairly close. It was time to get out of there, and I floored it. We had almost reached the trail entrance, and I was driving way too fast when suddenly something slammed into the side of the Jeep hard enough to make me fishtail a bit, followed by the same sound we had heard earlier, only this time much higher pitched. Almost like I had been injured, I slammed the brakes on, and the typical panic conversation began between us. You know the one. What the hell was that? Did we hit a deer? That wasn't a deer. Oh crap, let's go. I quickly continued down the trail and was finally in view of the lake when my friend in the back seat started screaming, "Look, look!" My friend in the front seat and I looked out my driver's side window to see this thing running through the woods toward the lake. I don't know what it was, but it was on 2 legs and had the shape of, I guess, a person. Only this person was moving at an unnatural speed through deep mud, trees, and thorn bushes, and their proportions seemed to be greatly off. Longer arms and legs with an average torso. We watched in silence as this thing reached the edge of the lake, bent over, and began running on all 4s, using its hands and leaping into the water. It was early October, and while it wasn't freezing, the water was definitely ice cold. We got out of there driving 70 miles an hour on the back roads until we reached town. At the first gas station, we pulled over and got out of the Jeep. There were small dents near the back end of the driver's side. I lied to my parents and said I had backed into a pole. We decided it was best not to tell anyone, as we didn't want to sound crazy, but every time I looked at that dent, I thought about it. I went back to that area multiple times during high school and never saw it again, but through the years I had heard others seeing particular things, including an experience of a group of kids seeing someone shoot themselves while sitting in a car, went to call the cops, came back and found nothing. Alright guys, tonight's first video clip is a guy who was out looking for his other dog, and he walks up to his fence line, where after his fence line is the tree line, and it is woods far beyond that. He's got one of his dogs with him who is up almost close to the tree line. All that's separating the dog from the tree line is, once again, that fence line. And he notices 2, maybe even more, sets of eyes, very large as well. And you can see the one, if you're looking straight at it, it actually blinks multiple times, turns its head, and turns back toward the camera. Check it out. I told you that's a very strange and compelling video evidence. For me, it is, at least. I don't know about you guys, but to me, looking at the eyes, seeing it blink, seeing it turn its head, and you know what's even more fascinating is the eyes are illuminated. Well, he has the flashlight on them, but when he takes it away, there's still darkness, or there's darkness now, and they're still glowing. So they're self-illuminating, which, as we know, Dogman is said to have self-illuminating eyes. So, on to tonight's second encounter. So this happened 2 or 3 years ago in central Maine, which in this area is very thick woods. My dad is a Maine guide, and he is not someone to believe in anything like this. He's a very rational, sane person that does not jump to conclusions. Anyway, he and 2 or 3 other guides were out in a training season for bear hunting with dogs. They were running the dogs for a good 2 hours or so, called the dogs back, and decided to try another place, which was nearby to another one of these bear baits. He let the dogs go, and they started running into the woods, but still within eyesight, when all of a sudden they started acting extremely weird. The dogs started cowering and backing up, which of course isn't normal for dogs that are trained to run big game. The group of hunters there had never seen any dogs act like this. They seemed truly scared of what was beyond that tree line, and then it gets weirder. They see good-sized treetops about 100 yards or so in the distance start to shake as whatever it was making its way through the thick woods. There was crackling and snapping of trees for a good 20 to 30 seconds before they couldn't see or hear anything anymore. Of course, they thought it could have been a moose making such a ruckus, but the trees were massive that were being moved, and it wouldn't have explained the dogs acting the way they were. My dad's the smartest person I've ever met when it comes to the backwoods of Maine, and he's been in this particular area his entire life. He's been a Maine guide for 40 plus years and has never seen a thing like this, not to mention the others that were with him. When everything calmed down, they tied the dogs up and made their way in. There were many broken branches, and the only tracks they found were going down a semi-steep hill, where it was sandy enough to get an imprint of sort. He said that it did not look like a hooved animal. There were odd-shaped, huge tracks, but hard to make out a full print due to whatever it was. They talked for a while about it, and one of the friends that was there said he's got a game trail set up nearby. He was hoping to be able to catch it on film. Unfortunately, there was nothing, and it must have gone in the other direction. Here's something that I find interesting that I've been thinking about recently. We hear all these accounts of these huge trees moving. And we automatically jump to the Bigfoot or Dogman walking through the woods. And because they're so big, they're moving 100-foot tall trees. I don't buy that. Now, there was only one set of tracks found going down and away from where the trees were coming towards. When the trees were swaying, it was like something was coming towards them, then the tracks were going down a hill away from them. All right. So if you put a 300 to 400 pound Dogman in the trees, kind of using the tree to tree method of motion or movement, those trees, the tree tops, will sway and bend, and branches will still be broken, right? And that explains, a 100 to 130 foot tree swaying. I just don't buy the fact that people say Bigfoot and Dogman move trees. Maybe little ones, but not 100-foot tall trees. But the explanation or rational explanation, if you really think about it, is this. I believe it to be a dogman by the way they describe the tracks, was coming at them using the trees. We all know that they go up. And as it realized that there were people there, they had dogs, it dropped down and booked it in a direction where it couldn't be followed. To me, that sounds like the most logical explanation. But I may be wrong. I'm not an expert. I'm just theorizing. So let's move on to tonight's second video clip, which is a group of boys in their backyard hanging out when they see something crouched down, and it's very large. You can tell that it's not human, and if that is a human, it moves very strangely, and it's obviously wearing some sort of costume, but I don't buy that it's a human. And it stands up, and just by the way it stands up, it rises up. It doesn't use anything except its legs. So if it wasn't a costume, I find it hard to believe. Now it starts to walk towards them, and the kids are like, let's get out of here. Get out of here now. Check it out. A very terrifying and creepy video all in one. I'm leaving it up to you guys to decide what you think. On to tonight's third encounter. My family has around 300 acres in northern Oklahoma. That has been in our family since the land rush. Growing up, the family would meet there for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but as family expanded, it was quickly outgrown. Nowadays, I'm about the only person that goes there, and I went there regularly to train with my firearms. I went there earlier this year and had an experience that shook me so badly that I haven't spoken about it until recently, and will never go back there alone. I arrived there at around 2 p.m. and set out my targets, but something felt off. I use an electronic headset for hearing protection that also amplifies ambient noise, and I noticed that everything seemed to stop. No wind, bugs, no birds, nothing. Just complete and total silence, which is very unusual for this area. I run my normal drills, and as the sun starts to set, something gets stranger. Odd smells, like a dirty litter box / body odor, started coming around, and I noticed that the coyotes were crossing the field west of me, almost as if they were consciously avoiding entering the woods nearby. Then I started hearing interference coming over my headset, and what sounded like disembodied voices speaking in an indiscernible language that I couldn't hear with the naked ear. Now I'm starting to worry. I start gathering my things, and I hear what sounds like a woman's blood-curdling scream coming from the woods. Now I've heard mountain lions and bobcats squaring off, which we do have on the property, but this sound was neither of those things. Around the same time, I got what I can only describe as a nauseating, omnidirectional feeling of being watched, shortly followed by a very distinct footsteps trudging through the foliage in the tree line around 30 yards from my position. I've been an avid hunter since I was a child and familiar with the noises of the woods. The cadence of these footsteps indicated that there was a large bipedal creature, oddly human-like, very concerning considering I'm in the middle of a large swath of property that's 25 miles from the nearest populated area. I pull out my phone and I start scanning the tree line with my flashlight. Standing behind a tree at the edge of the tree line was a tall black silhouette with spindly limbs and a pale face looking directly at me. I quickly grabbed my range bag and made a run towards my truck. I get about 50 yards from the truck and the light post on our property that is hooked up to county power and has never turned off in 20 years I've been going there suddenly cuts off. Now I'm running blind in the direction I believe my truck is, while I hit the unlock button on my fob trying to find the lights. I get in the truck and speed off, and as I'm watching the rear view, the light post turns back on. I've been doing everything I can do to rationalize or come up with a reasonable explanation for the things I had experienced, but I have no explanation. The kind of fear this experience put into me was unlike any kind of fear I had ever felt before. And today's third video clip is along that same line. A very terrifying kind of crawler-like creature hiding in the brush by this person's backyard. Check it out. A very chilling video clip, and on to tonight's final encounter. My dad and I were hiking back in late November of 2005 in a place called UBC Research Forest, north of Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, Canada, about 30 miles east and a bit north of Vancouver. It's on the edge of the mountains with several logging roads and trails. Anyway, the day was already getting late when we headed out, and the weather was horrible. No wind, but there were showers with hail and slush. We're the only people in the area hiking. The parking lot was empty both when we arrived and left. So after about an hour of hiking randomly up logging roads and trails, we were a good several miles into the area when we took a break by a small stream in a small gully. Anyway, we smell this horrible stench, like human decay, fish mixed in. Neither of us had ever smelled anything like it before, and we have both encountered every large animal out here on the coast. Because there was no wind, we knew it had to be close. We kept going along this hillside. Above us, at about 50 feet, is an old overgrown logging slash. Below us, a thickly wooded slope. Could see maybe 100 feet down the slope. We get this feeling like we are being followed and watched. The forest becomes silent. Even the local ravens didn't make a sound. We smell this stench a couple more times, only stronger, so we both begin hiking faster. As we come out of the small gully, we hear a crash. Spinning around, we race back to the crest and look back down. Something large, easily taller than my dad, who is 6 foot, disappears into the brush. We just catch a glimpse of this dark mass. Neither of us are armed, so we continue on at full pace, knowing there is a logging road ahead. Again, we smell that weird odor. We hear some strange noises from the old logging meadow above us. Whatever this thing is, it's moving silently. Yet, the odd time it would break a branch or bump a small tree. I've been followed by a bear and a cat before, but neither moved like this. It was way too silent to be either. Just for the record, grizzlies are not in this area, but I've encountered them before. After we round a bend on the slope, we hear movement again. It was on the lower side of us now, or so it seemed. After another few minutes, we hear it again and smell it as well. Now it's moving on the upper side of us, just over that low ridge, maybe 100 feet away. By now we can see the logging road, 100 to 200 feet ahead of us. Then this thing lets out this sound. It sent a shiver down my spine. My dad, who I've never seen afraid before, except the one time I was near death. It sounded like the cross between a growl, a howl, a human, and something unknown, and it lasted for longer than 10 seconds. We turned and ran to the road. Running down the road, we passed a junction and continued heading south. I dropped something a few seconds later, about 200 feet past that junction. I stop, turn, and pick it up. Up amongst the trees, something tall and dark ducked out of sight. What it was, I have no clue, but it was tall and fairly muscular. It was too dark to really tell what it was, getting close to dark, so we ran back to the parking lot. Unfortunately, it snowed the next day several inches. Otherwise, we would have gone back and searched for evidence of this occurrence. This is the only time I've ever been scared in those woods. All right, folks, I hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Guys, thank you for supporting this channel. Your support is what makes this channel so special and what continues to make it grow and go. Guys, you have no idea how much I appreciate everything. Your kindness, your just everything. So thank you. Looking forward to this weekend. Looking forward to the live stream. And Sunday, I'm going to spend some time with my dad before Monday. He goes in for his surgery. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty great weekend. I hope you guys have a good weekend as well. With that being said, everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real and they are out there. They are dangerous. Share a little bit of information with those you love and care about, and it may just save their life someday. Until next time, God bless you all.